Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण हरे हरे राम हरे हरे कृष्ण बाबू धन्यवाद प्रणाम जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण हरे राम हरे हरे कृष्ण हरे हरे राम हरे कृष्ण हरे राम हरे कृष्ण हरे राम हरे हरे कृष्ण हरे राम 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 हरे कृष्ण हरे Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद।
Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna जय श्री कृष्णा चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम हरे हरे Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Krishna Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare जय श्री कृष्णा चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त
Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौरभक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Prabhuji, can I start? Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Prabhuji and Mother's, Dandavat Pranam to all. So I'm starting the prayers. Om Agnana Timirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chashkuram Militam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhuttare Samati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Pramini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Chunyavadi Pachatade Satarini Om Agnana Timirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chashkuram Militam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Prabhuji and Matas. I am sharing my screen. Hare Krishna. So is it visible, my screen?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, Mataji. Samyukta Mataji, can you start from text 1, chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna Prabhuji Dhanapramam. Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. Purport. In this chapter, the Lord explains the process of the Eightfold Yoga system is a means to control the mind and the senses. However, this is very difficult for people in general to perform, especially in the age of Kali. Although the Eightfold Yoga system is recommended in this chapter, the Lord emphasizes that the process of Karma Yoga or acting in Krishna consciousness is better. Everyone acts in this world to maintain his family and their paraphernalia, but no one is working without some self-interest, some personal gratification, be it concentrated or extended. The criterion of perfection is to act in Krishna consciousness and not with a view to enjoying the fruits of work. To act in Krishna consciousness is the duty of every living entity because all are constitutionally parts and parcels of the Supreme. The parts of the body work for the satisfaction of the whole body. The limbs of the body do not act for self-satisfaction but for the satisfaction of the complete whole. Similarly, the living entity who acts for satisfaction of the Supreme Whole and not for personal satisfaction is the perfect sannyasi, the perfect yogi. The sannyasis sometimes artificially think that they have become liberated from all material duties and therefore they cease to perform Agnihotra yagnas, fire sacrifices, but actually they are self-interested because their goal is to become one with impersonal Brahman. Such a desire is greater than any material desire, but it is not without self-interest. Similarly, the mystic yogi who practices the yoga system with half-open eyes, ceasing all material activities, desires some satisfaction for his personal self. But a person acting in Krishna consciousness works for the satisfaction of the whole without self-interest. A Krishna conscious person has no desire for self-satisfaction. His criterion of success is the satisfaction of Krishna, and thus he is the perfect sannyasi or perfect yogi. Lord Chaitanya, the highest perfectional symbol of renunciation, prays in this way. न धनम न ज्ञानम न सुंदरीम कवितम व जगत ईशा कामये मामा जन्मानि जन्मासि वरे भवतात् भक्ति अहैतुकी pai. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor to enjoy beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers, but I want only is the causeless mercy of your devotional service in my life, birth after birth. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Sandhya Mataji, please can you?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. What is called renunciation, you should know to be the same as yoga or linking oneself with the Supreme. O son of Pandu, for one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire of sense gratification. Purport. Real sannyasa yoga or bhakti means that one should know his constitutional position as a living entity and act accordingly. The living entity has no separate independent identity. He is the marginal energy of the Supreme. When he is entrapped by material energy, he is conditioned, and when he is Krishna conscious or aware of the spiritual energy, then he is in his real and natural state of life. Therefore, when one is in complete knowledge, one ceases all material sense gratification or renounces all kinds of sense gratificatory activities. This is practiced by the yogis who restrain the senses from the material attachment. But a person in Krishna consciousness has no opportunity to engage his senses in anything which is not for the purpose of Krishna. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person is simultaneously a sannyasi and a yogi. The purpose of knowledge and of restraining the senses, as described in the Jnana and Yoga process, is automatically served in Krishna consciousness. If one is unable to give up the activities of his selfish nature, then Jnana and Yoga are of no avail. The real aim is for a living entity to give up all selfish satisfaction and to be prepared to satisfy the Supreme. A Krishna conscious person has no desire for any kind of self-enjoyment. He is always engaged for the enjoyment of Supreme. One who has no information of the Supreme must therefore be engaged in self-satisfaction, because no one can stand on the platform of inactivity. All purposes are perfectly served by the practice of Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Aryan Prabhuji, please come.
Yes, Prabhuji. Translation. For one who is neophyte in the Eightfold Yoga system, work is said to be means. And for one who is already elevated in yoga, celestial or of all material is said to be the means. Purport. The process of linking oneself with the Supreme is called yoga. It may be compared to a ladder for attaining the topmost spiritual realization. This ladder begins from the lowest material condition of the living entity and rises up to perfect self-realization in pure spiritual life. According to spiritual elevation, different parts of the ladder are known by different names. But all in all, the complete ladder is called yoga and may be divided into three parts, namely Jnana, Yoga, Dhyana, and Bhakti Yoga. The beginning of the ladder is called the Yoga Ruruksu stage, and the highest rung is called Yoga Rudha. Concerning the Eightfold Yoga system, attempts in the beginning to enter into meditation through regulative principles of life and practice of different sitting postures, which are more or less bodily exercises, are considered fruitive material activity. All such activities lead to achieving perfect mental equilibrium to control the senses. When one is accomplished in the practice of meditation, he ceases all disturbing mental activities. A Krishna conscious person, however, is situated from the beginning on the platform of meditation because he always thinks of Krishna and begin constantly engaged in the service of Krishna. He is considered to have ceased all material activity. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Ravin Prabhuji is there?
No, Prabhuji.
Okay. Akinchan Prabhuji, please.
The person is said to be elevated in yoga when, having renounced all the material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in the fruitive activities. Purport. When the person is fully engaged in the transcendental loving service of the God, he is pleased in himself, and thus he is no longer engaged in sense gratification or in fruitive activities. Otherwise, one must be engaged in sense gratification, since one cannot live without engagement. Without Krishna consciousness, one must be always seeking self-centered or extended selfish activities. But a Krishna conscious person can do everything for the satisfaction of the Krishna and therefore be perfectly detached from the sense gratification. One who has no real such realization must mechanically try to escape material desires before being elevated to the top rung of yoga ladder.
Hare Krishna. Loish Prabhuji, please can you read 6.5?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Pranam. Sorry, I am driving Prabhuji today.
Okay, Prabhuji. I read myself. Translation. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and is enemy as well. Purport. The word Atma denotes body, mind, and soul depending upon the different circumstances. In the yoga system, the mind and the conditioned soul are especially important. Since the mind is the central point of yoga practice, Atma refers to here to the mind. The purpose of yoga system is to control the mind and to draw it away from attachment to the sense object. It is stressed herein that the mind must be so trained that it can deliver the conditioned soul from the mire of nescience. In material existence, one is subjected to the influence of the mind and the senses. In fact, the pure soul is entangled in the material world because the mind is involved with the false ego, which desires to lord it over material nature. Therefore, the mind should be trained so that it will not be attracted by the glitter of material nature. And in this way, the conditioned soul may be saved. One should not degrade oneself by attraction to the sense object. The more one is attracted by the sense object, the more one becomes entangled in material existence. The best way to disentangle oneself is to always engage in mind and Krishna consciousness. The word "hai" is used for emphasizing the point. That is, that one must do this. It is also stated, mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo bandhavya vishaya sango muktai nirvisham manaha. For man, mind is the cause of bondage and mind is the cause of liberation. Mind absorbed in the sense object is the cause of bondage and mind detached from the sense object is cause of liberation. Amrita Bindu Upanishad 2. Therefore, the mind which is always engaged in Krishna consciousness is the cause of supreme liberation. Hare Krishna. Samyukta Mataji, can you read 6.6?
Yes, Prabhuji. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Purport. The purpose of practicing Eightfold Yoga is to control the mind in order to make it a friend in discharging the human mission. Unless the mind is controlled, the practice of yoga for show is simply a waste of time. One who cannot control his mind lives always with the greatest enemy, and thus his life and its mission are spoiled. The constitutional position of the living entity is to carry out the order of the superior. As long as one's mind remains an unconquered enemy, one has to serve the dictations of lust, anger, avarice, illusion, etc. But when the mind is conquered, one voluntarily agrees to abide by the dictation of the personality of Godhead, who is situated within the heart of everyone as Paramatma. Real yoga practice entails meeting the Paramatma within the heart and then following his dictation. For one who takes to Krishna consciousness directly, perfect surrender to the dictation of the Lord follows automatically. Hare Krishna.
Sandhya Mataji, please can you read?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. Purport. Actually, every living entity is intended to abide by the dictation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. When the mind is misled by the external illusory energy, one becomes entangled in material activities. Therefore, as soon as one's mind is controlled through one of the yoga systems, one should be considered to have already reached the destination. One has to abide by the superior dictation. When one's mind is fixed on the superior nature, he has no alternative but to follow the dictation of the Supreme. The mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. The effect of controlling the mind is that one automatically follows the dictation of the Paramatma or Supersoul. Because this transcendental position is at once achieved by one who is in Krishna consciousness, the devotee of the Lord is unaffected by the dualities of material existence, namely distress and happiness, cold and heat, etc. This state is practical samadhi or absorption in the Supreme. Hare Krishna.
Aryan Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Translation. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi for mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebble, stone, or gold, as the same. Purport. Book knowledge without realization of the supreme truth is useless. That this is stated as follows: Ata Shri Krishna Namadi Na Bhaved Graham in Indriyai Sevan Mukhe Hi Jivado Swayam Eva Spurti Adha. No one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, quality, and pastimes of Sri Krishna through his materially contaminated senses. Only when one becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental service to the Lord are the transcendental name, form, quality, and pastimes of the Lord revealed to him. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.234. This Bhagavad Gita is a science of Krishna consciousness. No one can become Krishna conscious simply by mundane scholarship. One must be fortunate enough to be associate with a person who is in pure consciousness. A Krishna conscious person has self-realized knowledge. By the grace of Krishna, because he is satisfied with pure devotional service, by realized knowledge, one becomes perfect. By transcendental knowledge, one can remain steady in his convictions. But by mere academic knowledge, one can be easily deluded and confused by apparent contradictions. It is the realized soul who is actually self-controlled because he is surrendered to Krishna. He is transcendental because he has nothing to do with mundane scholarship. For him, mundane scholarship and mental speculation, which may be as good as gold to others, are of no greater value than pebbles or stones. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Akinchan Prabhuji, please. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Akinchan Prabhuji. Is not
Sorry,
there.
Prabhuji, I was on mute and I was reading actually. Sorry.
Okay.
The person considered still further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutrals, meditators, the envious friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with the equal mind. A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. Krishna is realized in different degrees of Brahman, Paramatman, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna consciousness means concisely to be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. But those who are attached to the impersonal Brahman or the localized super soul also partial Krishna consciousness, because the impersonal Brahman is the spiritual ray of Krishna, and the supersoul is all pervading partial expansion of Krishna. Thus, the impersonalist and the meditator are also indirectly Krishna consciousness. A directly Krishna conscious person is the topmost transcendentalist, because such a devotee knows that he is built by Brahman and Paramatman. His knowledge of the absolute truth is perfect, whereas the impersonalist and the meditative yogi are imperfectly Krishna consciousness. Nevertheless, all of these are instructed herewith to be constantly engaged in their particular pursuits, so that they may come to the highest perfection sooner or later. The first business of the transcendentalist is to keep the mind always on the Krishna. One should always think of Krishna and not forget him even for a moment. Concentration of mind on the Supreme is called as samadhi or trance. In order to concentrate the mind, one should always remain in a seclusion and avoid disturbances by the external objects. He should be careful to accept favorable and reject unfavorable conditions that affect its realization. And in perfect determination, he should not anchor after unnecessary material things that entangle him by feelings of possessiveness. All these perfections and precautions are perfectly executed when one is directly in Krishna consciousness, because direct Krishna consciousness means self abnegation, wherein there is very little chance for the material possessiveness. Sri Rupa Goswami characterizes Krishna consciousness in this way. Anakshatasya vishayan yatharam uparyojantaha libaldana Krishna sambandena yuktam vairagya uchate. प्रपंचिकतया बुद्ध्या हरि संबंधी वस्तुनः मुमुक्षुभिः परित्योगो वैराग्यम फाल्गु कथयते. Well, one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated about possessiveness. On the other hand, one who rejects everything without the knowledge of its relationship to Krishna is not as complete in his renunciation. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.225 to 256. A Krishna conscious person well knows that everything belongs to Krishna, and thus he is always free from feelings of the personal possession. As such, he has no hankering for anything on his own personal account. He knows how to accept things in favor of Krishna consciousness and how to reject things unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. He is always aloof from the material things because he is always transcendental and he is always alone, having nothing to do with the person not in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness is a perfect yogi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. 6.11 to 11 to 12. Translation. To practice yoga, one should go to the secluded place and should lay kusha grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and a soft cloth. The seat should be neither too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses, and activities and fixing the mind on the purpose. Sacred place refers to the place of pilgrimage. In India, the yogis, the transcendentalists, or the devotees all leave home and reside in sacred places such as Prayaga, Madura, Vrindavana, Rishikesha, and Haridwar. And in solitude, practice yoga where the sacred rivers like the Yamuna and the Ganges flow. But often this is not possible, especially for Westerners. The so-called yoga scientists in big cities may be successful in learning material benefit, but they are not at all suitable for the actual practice of yoga. One who is not self-controlled and whose mind is not undisturbed cannot practice meditation. Therefore, in the Brahman Naradiya Purana, it is said that in Kali Yuga, the present Yuga or age, when people in general are short-lived, slow in spiritual relation, and always disturbed by the various anxieties, the best means of spiritual relation is chanting the holy name of the Lord. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, khalo nasteva gatiranyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of holy name of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. Hare Krishna. Samyukta, please can you read?
Translation. One should hold one's body, neck and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life purport. The goal of life is to know Krishna, who is situated within the heart of every living being as Paramatma, the four-handed Vishnu form. The yoga process is practiced in order to discover and see this localized form of Vishnu and not for any other purpose. The localized Vishnu Murti is the plenary representation of Krishna dwelling within one's heart. One who has no program to realize this Vishnu Murti is uselessly engaged in mock yoga practice and is certainly wasting his time. Krishna is the ultimate goal of life, and the Vishnu Murti situated in one's heart is the object of yoga practice. To realize this Vishnu Murti within the heart, one has to observe complete abstinence from sex life. Therefore, one has to leave home and live alone in a secluded place, remaining seated as mentioned above. One cannot enjoy sex life daily at home or elsewhere and attend so-called yoga class and thus become a yogi. One has to practice controlling the mind and avoid all kinds of sense gratification, of which sex life is the chief. In the rules of celibacy written by the great sage Yagna Vakya, it is said, Karmana Manasa Vacha Sarvastau Su Sarvada Sarvatra Maidhuna Tyago Brahmacharyam Prachakshate. The vow of Brahmacharya is meant to help one completely abstain from sex indulgence in words and mind at all times, under all circumstances and in all places. No one can perform correct yoga practice through sex indulgence. Brahmacharya is taught, therefore, from childhood when one has no knowledge of sex life. Children at the age of 5 are sent to the Gurukula or the place of the spiritual master, and the master trains the young boys in the strict discipline of becoming brahmacharis. Without such practice, no one can make advancement in any yoga, whether it be dhyana, jnana or bhakti. One who, however, follows the rules and regulations of married life, having a sexual relationship only with his wife and that also under regulation, is also called a brahmachari. Such a restrained householder brahmachari may be accepted in the bhakti school, but the jnana and dhyana school do not even admit householder brahmacharis. They require complete abstinence without compromise. In the Bhakti school, a household brahmachari is allowed controlled sex life because the cult of Bhakti Yoga so powerful that one automatically loses sexual attraction, being engaged in the superior service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 2.59, it is said, Vishaya vinivartante nirharasya dehinaha rasavarjam rasopyasa param drishtya nivartate. Whereas others are forced to restrain themselves from sense gratification, a devotee of the Lord automatically refrains because of the superior taste. Other than the devotee, no one has any information of the superior taste. Vigata Bhihi. One cannot be fearless unless one is fully in Krishna consciousness. A conditioned soul is fearful due to his perverted memory, his forgetfulness of his eternal relationship with Krishna. The Bhagavatam 11.2.37 says, Bhayam Vidyabdi Vestaha Syat Ishat Apatesya Viparyayo Smritihi. Krishna consciousness is the only basis for fearlessness. Therefore, perfect practice is possible for a person who is Krishna conscious. And since the ultimate goal of yoga practice is to see the Lord within, a Krishna conscious person is already the best of all yogis. The principles of the yoga system mentioned herein are different from those of the popular so-called yoga societies. Hare Krishna.
Read this one and we'll stop. Sandhya Mataji, please can you read?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
6.15.
Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thus practicing constant control of the body, mind and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulator, attains to the kingdom of God or the abode of Krishna by cessation of material existence. Purport. The ultimate goal in practicing yoga is now clearly explained. Yoga practice is not meant for attaining any kind of material facility. It is to enable the cessation of all material existence. One who seeks an improvement in health or aspires after material perfection is no yogi according to Bhagavad Gita. Nor does cessation of material existence entail one's entering into the void, which is only a myth. There is no void anywhere within the creation of the Lord. Rather, the cessation of material existence enables one to enter into the spiritual sky, the abode of the Lord. The abode of the Lord is also clearly described in Bhagavad Gita as that place where there is no need of sun, moon, or electricity. All the planets in the spiritual kingdom are still self-illuminated like the sun in the material sky. The kingdom of God is everywhere, but the spiritual sky and the planets thereof are called Param Dhama or superior abodes. Prabhuji, can someone read it, because my kid is not allowing to read.
Yeah, Aryan Prabhuji, can you complete this one? Akinchan Prabhuji, please can you complete this one?
Yes, Prabhuji. A consummate yogi who is perfect in understanding Lord Krishna, Lord Krishna, as is clearly stated herein by the Lord himself. Matchitta Matprana Matsthanam, can attain real peace and can ultimately reach his supreme abode, Krishna Loka, known as Goloka Vrindavan. In the Brahma Samhita 5.37, it is clearly stated, Goloka eva nivasati akilatma bhuta. The Lord, although residing always in his abode called Goloka, is all-pervading Brahman and is localized Paramatman as by the dint of his superior spiritual energies. No one can reach the spiritual sky Vaikunta or enter into the Lord's eternal abode Goloka Vrindavan without the proper understanding of Krishna and his plenary expansion Vishnu. Therefore, a person working in Krishna consciousness is a perfect yogi because his mind is always absorbed in Krishna's activities. Savai Manasa Krishna Padara Vindayo. In the Vedas also, Sveta Vathara Upanishad 3.8, we learn Tam Eva Vidhitvati Mrutyam Iti. One can overcome the path of birth and death only by the understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. In other words, perfection of yoga system is the attainment of freedom from the material existence and not some magical jugglery or gymnastic feats to be fool innocent people. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
We'll stop here.
Srila Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada. Vancha kalpa karojasya upasindubbhaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anantakoti Vaishnavebhyo. Thank you all.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay.